Mike Murray.
This is
SNL.
SNL
By the numbers.
Numbers.
Happy Wednesday. We are back. It's a Wednesday night. That means we do SNL By The Numbers on the Saturday Night Network. I am your host, Mike Murray. We are covering episode 946 of the aforementioned beloved sketch comedy show on NBC, SNL, hosted by Quinta Brunson, musical guest Lil Yachty. Happy to be back. Happy Passover. Happy Easter. Happy Ramadan, everybody. It's the season. We're 5 episodes left of this season of SNL. So we're going to talk about this episode and go through the numbers. I got a couple A to Z guests tonight with me. I'm going to go reverse alphabetical, introduce my guest, Zoe Walker, making her SNL By The Numbers debut. How you doing, Zoe?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here and excited to talk about numbers and stats. I'm a kindergarten teacher, so I usually talk about just numbers 1 through 10.
Yeah, no double decimal point, nothing like that.
No rounding or fractions.
Yeah, well, maybe you can help us break some down to easier terms, because I tend to get really deep in the stats, so might be a helpful resource. And you can also join me and John Schneider's team of people that share a last name with SNL cast.
Yeah. Yes. When I first was on, I was like, I should have made a joke about him being my brother or something, but I didn't.
Would have killed.
Yes.
And then my A guest tonight, as in Zoe being my Z guest, back after 2 years. He's got a better beard and he's better looking. It's Andrew Haynes.
What's up? It's so great to be here. It has been a really long time. 2 years is a long time. I appreciate the beard compliments. I'm just looking forward to talking SNL with you guys. Talking numbers is one of my favorite things. I'm a big baseball guy, which is definitely the most metriced sport, I'm wearing my Braves jersey right now. Gold trim, 2021 World Series champions Braves jersey. So I'll be seeing them with the Padres on Friday in Atlanta. Also down there for a baby shower. So just excited to talk numbers. Folks might know too that I'm a fish head, and fish heads are obsessed with statistics about the band and stuff too. So that was what attracted me to this whole, Saturday Night Network thing when John first mentioned it several years ago. Is I love stats in general, and obviously SNL. So you could have me on, more than every 2 years if you wanted.
Yeah, that'll happen. And also, shout out Haynes. I think you were one of the first people that John would put my stats up, and you're like, "Oh, I love these," and I was like,
"I do."
I'm like, "This is my dog right here." This guy's like giving me props. Anyway, and for the folks at home, tell them what a fish head is.
Well, there's a band called Fish. They were pretty popular in the 90s. They're still pretty popular. People go on tour. They're a jam band. They have a lot of orchestrated compositional stuff and a lot of improvisation, and but they're obsessed with statistics. So we measure our shows that we've been to and the songs you've seen, the frequencies and all that kind of stuff. So we're so whether it's music or comedy or sports, I'm a total stats guy. Love it.
Love it. Zoe, do you have any obsession? Do you follow any bands or anything like that? Any artists?
No, I don't have any cool obsessions.
But
I'm here right now. I'm really
tickets.
obsessed with, I'm in grad school and I got Beyonce tickets. Those kind of fell into my lap. Things just happen. No obsessions.
Awesome. Well, we are going to debut the screen time for this last episode, and I'll start with you, Zoe, as far as how did you like Quinta on Saturday?
Oh, I loved her. I was so excited to see she was hosting. I feel like I've grown up with her, seeing her on BuzzFeed and everything that was happening kind of when I was in middle school, and high school. So it was really exciting to see someone from the internet that I was watching on like my iPod Touch host SNL. And then also like as a teacher, I like at first I couldn't watch Abbott Elementary because it was like too close to real life and it stressed me out. But then I kind of got over that and I really love the show and I love what she's doing for teachers. So I was really excited to see her and I think she did a really great job.
And can you tell me what did Quinta Brunson do on BuzzFeed? I heard someone else mention that on the podcast.
Yeah, so she got her start kind of, I think, on BuzzFeed, just doing like sketch comedies. She was in that that viral meme about the girl who's like never been on a date, where she was like, "Oh, you got money." If you'd seen that, that's kind of where she got famous. She was a meme, and then she was like a reoccurring person on BuzzFeed doing like sketch comedy, but like digital shorts and stuff like that.
Nice. Is she the first BuzzFeed alum to host? It has to be, right?
I think she has to be. Yeah. Yeah.
So we have the screen time from last week. At the top of the list, of course, is Quinta Brunson with 16 minutes, 13 seconds, followed by cast member leader JAJ, who for third time in his career led the cast, and he had 9 minutes, 51 seconds. Big bulk of that being in the cold open, pretty much a solo cold open as Trump, his 13th appearance as Trump. Colin Jost at number 3, he's 7 minutes, 55 seconds, followed by Chloe Fineman, 6:44. Diana Gordon, the guest of Lil Yachty. I don't think I've ever seen a guest of the musical guest have more screen time, but she did. 6:22 she had. Michael Che at 6:18. Lil Yachty at 5 minutes, 59 seconds. Marcelo Hernandez with another great night. It's his third 5+ minute episode of the season. He had 5 minutes, 57 seconds. Bowen Yang at 5:25. Michael Longfellow with a career high screen time of 4:56. Kenan Thompson with a respectable 4:38. Mikey Day, 3 minutes, 24 seconds. In the cold open, he appeared and then had that great traffic sketch. Devin Walker at 3 minutes, 24 as well. Andrew Dismukes with a good night, 3:20. Sarah Sherman, 3 minutes, 9 seconds. Molly Carney at 2 minutes, 45. They appeared twice. Punky Johnson appeared 4 times with 2 minutes, 36 seconds. John Higgins, 1 minute, 55 seconds. And actually, we counted 2 appearances. One of them was the PDD Street Eat sketch and also a 1 second voice appearance roasting, or jeering Colin Jost and Che's April Fool's prank when he just yelled, "You stink" at him. Heidi Gardner at 1:42. Ben Marshall, 1:39. Martin Hurley, 1:30. Ego with a season low 1 minute 20. We didn't see a lot of Ego, but when we did see her, it was great. And Steve Higgins with 12 seconds of voice work. So Andrew Haynes, 2 years later, you're seeing some screen time. What do you think?
Well, the first thing that jumped out to me was Diana Gordon. Definitely don't usually see a guest of a musical guest that far up the chart. But really, this is obviously a very unique situation that put her up there. The thing that jumps out to me as far as regular players, I knew that Ego wasn't in this episode much, but hate to see her solo. She's one of my favorites, and she feels like, she's just been having a really awesome season, particularly through the first half. So, would have loved to see a little bit more of her this episode, but of course, I love seeing everyone else, and there's only, time for so many people in every episode. So I'm surprised to see her that low down. I don't know exactly where she normally is, but I would guess that she's squarely in the top half, maybe, just a few spots down. Often the host is, fills that top. Well, they always fill that top spot pretty much. I know that we've been having a lot of turnover in the second spot underneath the host. For the last several weeks, it seems like there've been a lot, we've had like a different person kind of in that second spot.
7 consecutive weeks. We had a different
That's
name.
wild. Yeah, that's wild.
That's a crazy stat.
Yeah, I love it. I love that churning of the cast members as far as that major, placement in the episode. But the biggest thing that sticks out to me is Ego just being so far down there. So I'm so sorry.
Yeah, Ego is 6th in the cast in screen time with an hour 25.
That makes sense.
Just she had 2 kind of off weeks. The Jen Ortega episode, she was not in a ton either, but had that another again. The Exorcist sketch. I think she stole the show. So just goes to show that you can be in a little bit and make a big impact.
Yeah.
I will say I don't talk about the musical guests that much, but I was really into Lil Yachty's performances with Diana Gordon. I've been listening to that album like all week now.
Yeah.
You into it, Andrea?
Yeah, and that's actually what I was gonna say. I've been doing stuff at work. This has not been a good week for me to listen to a lot of stuff while I'm working. But that was my first thought is I'm gonna have to like check out this album because I really have never listened to any Lil Yachty at all, and I thought both performances were amazing. And the next day, we actually had a SNL watch party this weekend, and so with the show not getting over till 1 a.m. and my girlfriend's friends, being over at the house and stuff, I definitely stayed up pretty late that night. So and then I had another friend come into town the next day who wanted to meet up for lunch at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I was like barely awake, but as soon as we got there, that was what I wanted to talk about. I was like, did you guys see this Lil Yachty performance? I just thought it was so cool and unique, and people there were ready to talk about it. They were like, oh, you haven't heard it? It's like a psychedelic rap album. It's amazing. So I plan on getting into it this week. And I love the performance. And I like the stage setup too. I'm just a sucker for green, my favorite color.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what SNL should do more. I mean, I don't know. I don't always know if it's the artist that comes in and tells the production staff what to do or they suggest things. But a lot of times the negative thing about hip hop artists is there's not much to look at during the performances. And I was like, I like the band in the back, and we have some. I said to my wife, and I'm like, love the vegetation. There's green on stage, and then, but yeah, the album is Let's Start Here, Lil Yachty's album. Zoe, are you a Lil Yachty fan? And then if you could comment on your thought on the episode and the screen time here.
Oh yeah, Lil Yachty. I love to say Lil Yachty. I don't listen to a lot of Lil Yachty, but I really like his name, and I liked his fuzzy little hat. But as for screen time, it was sad to see Ego at the bottom. Every time I see her at the bottom, I like get stressed out because I feel so emotionally attached to her that I'm like, she needs at least 3 minutes or I can't like sleep at night. But then I also like, you'll have to tell me if this is normal, but I feel like Marcelo got a lot of time. Is that typical of what he's been getting this season?
Well, it's his third episode this season that's had 5+ minutes. His career high was the previous episode because he anchored the cold open with Heidi. And so Marcelo, bottom of the pack as far as the whole cast. He's down there with the rookies. But
Yeah.
Marcelo's been like picking up steam for sure.
Yeah. And what about Bowen? Is that like, I feel like it's low, but I don't know. I feel like we didn't see a lot of him. Is that
I can grab you his
too?
average. If you have any other thoughts, I'll grab the average real quick.
I do think that Marcelo's getting good rookie minutes, though. As far as rookies go, like he's getting some time and he's making the most of it. I feel like a lot of his appearances have been very memorable, and I feel that way about a lot of the rookies this year. So, yeah, I think he's been doing all right. It's tough in that first year, but as I said, I think his performances are memorable. And to touch on the set design for the musical guests, when I believe that when we had Don Roy King on, and John interviewed Don Roy King, SNL director, old SNL director for a very long time until recently, he talked about how musical artists do come in with their own ideas for that set. And it's very tough, but it's his job because he said Lauren doesn't like to say no. So if an artist comes in and they want to do something cool, it's pretty much like, all right, figure it out, buddy. So so I'm sure that was Lil Yachty's planning.
Yeah, Lil Yachty's like, we need to roll out some sod, grow some grass this week. But Zoe, to answer your question, Bowen Yang this season has been averaging, including this week, 6 minutes 17. So which is second behind Keenan, and Ego's 5:20 is her average per episode. So yeah, I mean, we mentioned that stat about how it's been different every week, and now JJ, but third time in his career. The first time of his career that he led the cast was his first episode, his debut, season's 47 premiere, and then a couple weeks ago, and now this past week. So definitely helps when you have like a solo cold open. So. And then, but I want to talk about Quinta because this is a low screen time for a host this season. It's the lowest this season. It's the lowest host screen time since Willem Dafoe last year, who had 15 minutes, 29 seconds. And you might off the bat be like, oh, they should have had more, he or she should have had more screen time, depending on the host, if you like the host. But I was like, I kind of like when the host is like in that range, because they maybe are getting put in sketches that are like suit their skills. And I actually love when hosts like blend with the cast more and they're not just forced to be front and center. I'm sure Quinta could have done anything front and center. I mean, she's the star of a hit show, but this sketch selection this week I thought was really good for her. And Zoe, what do you think? I mean, were you hoping to see more of Quinta when the show ended, or were you kind of like, oh, she killed it, I don't really care that she was only in there for 16 minutes 13 seconds instead of like 20 minutes?
Yeah, I definitely felt like I didn't see her as much, or things weren't necessarily built around her as much as other hosts. But I think even looking back on like Abbott, she's from an ensemble TV show, so not every episode of Abbott is centered around her character. So I feel like she might have like the spirit of a team player. So she probably came in willing to be put in a sketch wherever she was most useful. So maybe that's why the vibe of the night was a little different, and it felt like maybe she wasn't as big of a bright shining star in every sketch, but I felt like where they had her, she was really doing some of like the best stuff in the sketch.
Yeah, that's a great point about Abbott. And I mean, I was looking at this. I've been noticing a trend this season already that the host has had more screen time this season than the past two on average. Like looking at, Keke Palmer had almost 24 minutes. Aubrey Plaza had 25 minutes. Amy Schumer had 26 minutes. Meg Thee Stallion had 24. Miles Teller had 26. So the only hosts that have had, under 20 minutes so far is like Selena Gomez last year. Michael B. Jordan had 1 second shy of 20 minutes. Looking back, it's like Ariana DeBose, Simu Liu, Kieran Culkin, Rami Malek had 16:47, so like right on pace, basically with Quinta this week. The episodes I listed right there, like a lot of them were really good. And Andrew Haynes, his ID on Twitter, his handle is SNL has a cast. So typically when we see less hosts, that means we're going to see more casts, right? And, less
Love
cameos, all that stuff. So what do you think? Obviously it can be an outlier this season, but you like the episode. And do you think that when the host has less screen time, that might be a good thing, not necessarily like just like a coincidence?
I think it can be a good thing. I don't think that it necessarily is good or bad. I do have a little bit of a theory why the hosts are taking up a little bit more screen time this year. I do feel like the host bookings have leveled up a little bit this year compared to last year. I had a lot of first-time hosts last year. I feel like they have we're booking a little bit bigger names this year. It just feels like a little bit of a bigger year in that way. So I wonder if they're giving them a little bit more time. Listen, when you have, sometimes you have some comedy, great, come on the show and they're just going to be in every sketch. And I don't have a problem with that at all. As long as they're making me laugh, that's what it's about. I didn't think twice about Quinta in this episode and she was amazing. I loved this episode and I thought she was the perfect host, and everything she was in, she killed. It didn't even cross my mind that she could have been in more, or obviously could have been in less. I just thought the whole episode was so well-rounded. To me, the order of the sketches, every sketch was getting laughs for me. Yes, some a little bit more than others. Obviously, that's going to be any episode of SNL. But I just thought in particular, this was a really well-rounded episode where everything worked. It didn't have any real duds. And she was brilliant in all of her performances. I just thought it was a really well-rounded episode. Her monologue was fantastic. So to me, it was just the whole package was the reason that we tune in for SNL. This was a really great product this week, and I don't know that I would change anything about it. And I loved Quinta. She was amazing.
Agreed. I mean, before we wrap up on screen time, I thought maybe like the Keke Palmer and maybe Austin Butler, like episodes like that I thought that the host could have been part of the cast, and everything just kind of like felt like good vibes the whole night.
Totally. It was
Zoe,
definitely
any
good
final
vibes.
thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with that.
like a fun show.
I would just toss out too. Keenan. I feel like Keenan usually has like more screen time, right? This is a low episode for Keenan.
Oh yeah, this is a low episode.
Yeah.
We look at like Keenan's season so far. It's funny because we'll do power rankings later as we always wrap up, and it's like his like worst episode would be like a great episode for someone else. You'll be like oh, huge night for them, but it's like Keenan's like worst episode of the year. Looking back on Keenan's last 5 episodes, he had 438 this week. Jenna Ortega, he had 548. Kelsey was his lowest one. He had 241. Woody Harrelson, he had 8 minutes, 6 seconds. Pedro Pascal, he had 4 minutes, 43. Michael B. Jordan, he had a huge night with 11 minutes, 4 seconds. And Aubrey Plaza, he had 9 minutes. This was definitely lower for Keenan. But I think the headline of the week, maybe even anytime that I see SNL stories being picked up by media, that's always a great indicator for me to prepare some stats. And I don't know, Zoe, what do you think like the media was picking up on this week from this episode? Do you see any headlines?
No, I wasn't on Twitter.
Basically just like the Colin Jost, Michael Che moment that. So I saw a lot of like anytime I see like, those Facebook headlines or like anything like that, I'm like, that sees SNL, it always catches my eye. And I'm like, oh, people that don't watch SNL are hearing about SNL, which is cool. I'm gonna show some weekend update stats. One moment, sorry.
And I did not. Thank you for telling me. Did you say it was Higgins, not his dad, but the young Higgins?
Yeah, John Higgins.
Higgins the young who yelled at Colin. I didn't know who that was. I haven't had a chance to watch the Hot Take show or the roundtable, so that's probably been mentioned already. But I didn't know that was John Higgins. So that's really funny. Yeah,
if you go listen to it now with the knowledge that it's him, you can definitely tell that it is him. And it would have been pretty wild if people have mentioned on this podcast before, but it's amazing that they've gone 900 and almost 50 shows and they don't get more audience interruption. I don't, you barely hear a sneeze in the audience, so let alone someone heckling an update anchor. I have up here just a huge shout out to some help from John and the marketing team doing some joke segment counts for me, because it's kind of a thing that I wanted to do this year. Is just like how many times, because my most frequently asked question, as I bring up a lot, is like, why do Michael Che and Colin Jost get different screen time? They have the same job. It's like, well, they get different guests, and sometimes they get different, more joke segments and things like that. So I'm like, let's put it all out there. So I also love this picture, just the look on Michael Che's face when he realizes that he just like absolutely, derailed Colin Jost's week live on national TV. So we have up here the screen time, the amount of joke segments, and the amount of guest segments. And by joke segment, I mean like when they put a picture next to Colin or Michael's face and they introduce a topic, they might have a couple punchlines about that one topic, but I'm including that one segment as a quote unquote joke for Weekend Update. So Colin Jost on Update only. Keep in mind, Colin appeared in the Blue Christmas Goodbye to Cecily, and Michael Che appeared in the Please Don't Destroy Chelsea pre-tape with Steve and Marty. So they have one other appearance each. I did not include those in these stats. Colin Jost's screen time on Update this year has been in 1 hour, 35 minutes, 7 seconds versus a Michael Che's 1 hour, 5 minutes, 7 seconds. So exactly 30 minutes more of Colin Jost. Zoe, when you watch Weekend Update, does it feel like there's more Colin Jost than Michael Che, or is this surprising to you?
It definitely feels like there's more Colin Jost, and maybe this is just like because I already know that he statistically gets more. He's definitely easier to make fun of, so I feel like that plays into it. So yeah, it definitely feels like a lot more Colin than Michael time.
Do you have any theories why that is? Because I collect the data myself, so I kind of know why, but I kind of want to ask an outsider do you know why he might get more screen time than Che?
I mean, I feel like you look at Colin Jost and you can just like roast him more, make more jokes. He's funnier to make uncomfortable. I feel
Yeah,
like
you're
he
nailing
like
it.
walks around with like a gigantic like punching bag, and so if a cast member wants to be on, I feel like I'd rather be with the guy who I can make fun of than Michael Che, who might be more difficult to make fun of, and it might not land as easy.
Right. And there's a punchline with the camera work that they do constantly. So listeners of our show will be well aware of this, but it's they cut away from Michael Che almost immediately. If his joke segment is over, they'll go to Colin Jost, especially if it's a racial joke or a sexist joke. They'll go right to Colin Jost and like make him follow Che's like dark punchline. So he'll do some kind of like, you know, inappropriate or dark humor, and then it's like cut to Colin Jost. So like a lot of times the laughter that you hear from Michael Che's punchlines are happening while showing Colin Jost. So that's one thing. And then just going to more stats here. Colin Jost has had 170 joke segments versus Michael Che's 134. And as far as guest segments, whether it's one or two people sliding up to the desk, Colin just has had 19 guests this season, and Che has had 14. So, Andrew Haynes, what do you have to say about Colin and Michael's stats this year?
So, yeah, that phenomenon with cutting to Jost after Che, makes sense that it's going to build a little bit of a cushion there for him. I admit, though, it does not feel like, to me, it didn't feel like we only see 2/3 Che to a whole Colin Jost. I mean, basically an hour to an hour and a half. I didn't know the numbers would be that staggering. That Colin Jost is doing like 50% more. That surprises me. That does surprise me, honestly. The difference didn't feel that big when I'm watching the show, but that's a good stat to know.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, and there are episodes that Che like outscores Jost, and but just at the end of the day, after 16 episodes, it's funny that's exactly 30 minutes more, and again, not including their other appearances. But just generally talking about Jost and Che is like, what is it about their chemistry? I'll start with you, Haynes. That like, do you think it's changed over their tenure? And if not, then like, what about it works? Let's just say now.
Well, I think they've gotten, as any two people working together, especially in this public way, would. I think they've gotten closer, and you can tell that they're as good of friends now as they've ever been. I know that some people, over the last several weeks, or at least several weeks ago, and maybe I've heard this a few times, people were saying that they didn't know if they were completely still like having a great time together or something. People thought that they were missing a little bit of some of the fun vibe that they've had before. I mean, I think some of that, I think maybe the first time we saw that was the episode that Cecily left. That was when, they both seemed to not be in a great mood, but I mean, it's pretty clear to know why that they would be a little bit off that night. I mean, this past weekend, if you're worrying about the relationship between Colin and Che at this point, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, this was amazing. I love I always love the joke swaps. I love pranks on Weekend Update. It's a great place for pranks to occur when they used to happen between John Mulaney's writing and Hader's performance of Stefan, or the many other times that we've seen people kind of punk each other a little bit on Weekend Updates. And these guys do it the best. They have the best relationship, I think. Well, I don't know. Amy and Tina were pretty close, but and maybe they are even better friends. They probably are, but Che and Jost definitely have a really special thing going on, and I do think it's grown, as you would expect. And I think but I never thought it was in a bad place. I always just thought, I always thought they were buddies. But you do see more and more over the last several years, in particular, how they're really like best friends. And I love the whole warm vibe between them. I love that Colin can just always be the punching bag, almost always. Really, Che burns himself more than Colin burns Che, it seems like. Once in a while, Che will do a joke that like makes fun of himself. Colin doesn't make fun of Che enough. I'm just pro making fun of people. So I'm always down for folks making more fun of each other. But I think they have clearly they have a great relationship. I don't know what people were worried about. I never really saw it. Maybe some days they weren't laughing quite as much as normal. I don't know. I just think people were reading way too much into it. And this weekend in particular was just so special. The whole joke. So I'm sure folks probably know at this point, but if you don't, Che asked the audience not to laugh at Colin's jokes as an April Fool's prank. And they weren't for a little while. He was getting people were laughing a little bit, but you weren't getting the full roar that you're supposed to get. And then, of course, after one joke in particular, when you could almost hear a pin drop. And then John Higgins, yells, "You stink." And Che, tells him that, "Oh yeah, I told everybody not to laugh at you," as an April Fool's joke. And you can just see his heart, like ripped out moments before that. It was just so brilliant. He burned him so bad. And they laugh about it so much. And even when he tries to move on to the next joke, he's like, "I'm sweating so much." I think he says, you can tell.
He says, "You're evil."
Yeah, he says that. Yeah,
this is the meanest thing you've ever done to me, he says.
Yeah, and it is. And it was hilarious. And Colin loves it. As a person who just, as a true comedian, the truest form of comedian, like, Colin loves that so much. Listen, I'll tell you a little story. I don't do stand-up, but I think I kind of have. I've done some, comic writing, and I think I probably have kind of the soul of a comedian in the way that I get a little bit of fun, kind of messing with people. And there's, for some reason, I don't know what happened to me, probably a question for my therapist, but like, it means so much to me when the people I care about make fun of me. When my grandfather used to if my grandfather laid a sick burn on me, it was like the most amazing thing in the world. It was the best feeling. And I know that that's exactly how Colin felt that night. Like, we're laughing so hard. And he was so terrified in that moment, but realizing that he was being punked on that level, I can't imagine how much it warmed his heart. And that whole segment was just like a massive Michael Che hug for Colin, I think, in his soul, so loved it. Amazing.
Love it. Great comparison. And if I can add one comparison to that, it's like playing music is like when you're on stage and you're like playing a riff and the drummer gives you the stank face, you're like, that's the highest form of compliments, is when someone just gives you like the nastiest, grossest face, so you know that you did a good job.
Mm-hmm.
Zoe, when you think of Colin and Michael, and this, I think if I'm going to make a prediction, it is their last season. That's just my opinion. And maybe this adds to that theory, that them doing this kind of prank and kind of laying it all in the field for their last 6 episodes, if that is true. When you think about them and we're talking about the finale and that was their last show together, what would you describe their chemistry or their tenure on the show to someone who might not know? Because I know that's a big question, but it's like,
Yeah.
they bring an energy that Seth Meyers didn't have, or Jimmy Fallon and Tina Fey, Amy didn't have. Like, they almost have like a brotherhood. Like, it's and like Haynes said, it's grown so much. If you watch their old episodes, I remember when they started, like, they weren't that good. Like, in their first few shows, maybe even their first 10 shows, a little rough around the edges. And like, now it's so smooth. So I'm just kind of curious, Zoe, first of all, if you want to see more of them in the future, or you think that it's kind of run its course. They're both now have passed Seth Meyers' record for most shows behind the desk. So I don't know, just kind of like your thoughts on them and their tenure on the show.
Yeah, I definitely think they make each other better. I wouldn't want one without the other necessarily. And I think their fame hasn't outgrown SNL. Like, I think they serve the show well when Weekend Update comes on. I think they like fill the role of the fake news reporters well, that I'm not thinking, oh, I want to see this guy in a movie or I want to see this guy in a TV show. As for like whether or not this is their last season, I used to really be sick of them. Honestly, when I was like watching the show, because me and my friends had little crushes on Pete Davidson, I'd be like, who are these like 2 old guys? Get him off the screen. But now I'm like, I don't want them to leave. And I also don't want anyone currently in the cast stuck behind the desk yet. So I feel like I'm still excited for everyone who's on the show right now being in sketches. I don't necessarily want them their focus to be Weekend Update. But yeah, when I think of them, I think of like two besties and like puzzle pieces to each other.
Yeah, well said. I mean, I think maybe the show learned their lesson from the Cecily experiment that, you really do handicap somebody by not allowing them to spread their wings in the writer's room and on stage in sketches if they're writing update jokes and that's their moment. Because, when Seth Meyers went behind the desk and became head writer, like, like Colin and Michael, we rarely saw him outside that role. So, I mean, if I were to guess, I would say it would be an outside hire or someone from the writer's room. I know people have speculated about Sarah Sherman or Dismukes or Michael Longfellow. All would probably do a great job, but I wouldn't predict them to be the next update anchor. Andrew, what do you think? Do you think that this is their last season?
I think that it's more likely than last season. I kind of thought last season might be their last season. And so, the longer you go, your tenure on the show, obviously the more likely it is that it's got to be your last season sooner than later. So, I mean, I kind of think that, yeah, this might be the last season. If it's not, I won't have any problem with it all. I think Zoe made a really great point that like their fame has not outgrown the show. I'm not tired of them in any way, but they are in such a great place. It's fun to leave when you're on top. I don't know, maybe other people have grown tired of them. Maybe they aren't at the top anymore, but it feels to me like they are. And the camaraderie is clearly at the highest level. And so it honestly does feel like they're kind of peaking in a way. Not a lot of folks get to quit at the top of their game. Mike and I are both big sports fans. That's not the way it goes for most of the greats. Most of the greats don't really get to go out on top. If they left after this season, I think it would be perfect and it would have been an incredible tenure. If they're back next year, or if they, want to try and get through season 50, because they have some secret knowledge that we don't, that the whole show is going to end, and they're just going to fill this out, which I pray is not the case, then I would love to have them till the end. But I do, if I was a betting man, I had to put money down, I might say that, yeah, this would be their last season.
Right. I think that the season 50 conversation has to be in our heads right now, wrapping up 48 into 49. So, like, I think whether you think the season has been great or not so great, you would have to admit that it's a transitional year. And I think it's been a good one, in my opinion. But I think that SNL and Lorne Michaels and the whole crew there at NBC, knowing how much of a legacy this show has, they have to be thinking about that. We want the show to be celebrating 50 years only because of how great the show still is. It's not fun to, like, like, again, Andrew, like sports teams, like to celebrate the greatest player in a sport and then have the team suck on the field. It kind of takes the magic out of it. It's like, oh, we used to be good. Like, so SNL doesn't want to show all the stars they've created, the Bill Haders, Sudeikis', Adam Sandler, Eddie Murphy, and then be like, oh, but remember how good the show used to be? So I think with that in mind, it would behoove them to install the next regime of update anchors, to give them at least a year before they have SNL 50. So I think that has to be a conversation that I think Michael Che and Colin Jost would respect, that like a next era should begin and shouldn't begin right at 50. So that definitely bolsters my opinion that it is their last season. We are going to move on to some cast stats on Weekend Update. And for context, I did put Che and Jost on this as well. So this is, again, the screen time of each cast member on Update so far this year in 48. And then I ranked this one by percentage of their total, because I was like, obviously, if they've been on Update more, they should have more screen time, right? So it's kind of obvious. So I figured I want to look more at how valuable is Update to this particular cast member. So right now, obviously, Che and Jost at the top. 99.7% of Michael Che's screen time this season has been an update, like no brainer. Colin Jost, 98.9. And then Michael Longfellow, 38.6% of his screen time this season has been on Weekend Update. He's been on there 5 times as a rookie for 14 minutes, 18 seconds. And of his 5 appearances on Update, that accounts for 11% of his appearances all year, even if it's a really small appearance like Pinocchio on the red carpet. Like, that's an appearance. So I took percentages of their total stats this year. So I'll just read the top, and then I'll get some opinions from my awesome guests. So Michael Longfellow, 14 minutes, 18 seconds. Marcelo Hernandez, who just had his 3rd as a rookie this week, 10 minutes, 13 seconds. Sarah Sherman, 10:47. But remember, this is about percentage of them being of their total screen time. So Marcelo Hernandez, 23% of his time on SNL has been on Update. So a great way to look at this chart, if you don't want to tune into YouTube and see the chart, is looking at Kenan Thompson. This season so far, he's appeared on Update for 6 minutes, 34 seconds. So has Devin Walker, basically. He's been on there for 6:33. But to Devin Walker, those 6.5 minutes are so much more valuable to him because that's 17% of his season right there. For Kenan, 6% of his season. So Kenan's everywhere. He doesn't need to appear on Update to get seen. So Zoe, when you look at this chart right here, I kind of just want to, if you have the takes on the math, and by all means, I love math, but I kind of want to have a conversation about how important is Update, because I'm kind of down to hear both sides. That you don't need Update to be successful on the show, and I'm also down to hear the argument that you absolutely need Update to be on the show. So where do you fall on this?
Well, for me personally, I feel like Update is really important to get me to want to keep watching the show. I want to know who's on it every week. And so I think Update is a great tool to express who you actually are and learn about the cast members. So I've definitely loved getting to know Marcelo and Michael Longfellow on Update. But also on the other hand, like Devin Walker, I don't really care when he's on Update. I think he does really well in actual sketches. So I'd say it's important, but it's not the end all be all.
Haynes, what do you think?
I'm kind of in a similar place to Zoe in that I don't think you need Weekend Update to establish yourself, but clearly they are using Weekend Update to establish the newer folks right now. I mean, Michael, Marcelo, Sarah, and Devin are, leading the pack right there under Che and Jost, as the people who are obviously on it every week. So I love that they're doing that. When the season started, it was kind of like everybody just started getting Weekend Update appearances. I love that as a way to introduce them to us. I don't think that, there are plenty of cast members who, I don't think start out doing a ton of Weekend Update stuff and then become established names. But this is a way to, the focus is obviously clearly on you when you're a Weekend Update character. So I think it's a really great way to get to know the new folks. And I love that they're doing that because as you can see from these numbers, we would be noticing them a lot less if it was all, in sketches. So, not surprising because I watch the show and know how much they've been featured on Weekend Update, but I do love the way that they're using them that way to give us that opportunity for sure.
Right. And, I think about the skill sets that individuals bring to the show. And 2 I thought of were like Ego Odom and Beck Bennett. So it took both of them a while to be on Update. And it's not because they probably didn't have good ideas. It's just because they're unreal live performers in sketches. So if you put Ego Odom or Beck Bennett in a sketch, it's going to be a better sketch. That's I think that's almost undisputed. Like I said earlier with the screen time, Ego Odom popping up as the mom in the back seat of in the traffic sketch with Quinta and Mikey and Chloe, things like that, just little things, or being the straight man in a sketch and just kind of keeping the pace. So Ego and I would obviously Kenan is maybe the GOAT of being, the leader of a sketch, which is why he dominates in all categories. So people like that don't need update. Obviously, it helps. Someone like a Pete Davidson, I don't think his career could have existed without that. Leslie Jones, same thing. So if you are a stand-up comedian, it makes sense that behind the desk doing material that you have probably written all of or most of, that performers like that will do well with that. But I think it's always just fun to see anyone have the spotlight on them. And if it's not in the cold open, it has to be Weekend Update typically. And I mean, like literally, like spotlight on you. You're just talking to the camera. So the only cast member this so far that we have not seen is Andrew Dismuke. So he's only been on Update this season for 12 seconds, and that was way back in the Miles Teller episode, appearing as Korn opposite Bowen Yang's Lanternfly. So the Miles Teller episode, which I think aired back in 2008 at this point, it seems so long ago. So we're going to look at all the update correspondence we've seen so far. And I want you guys to think about what your top 3 favorite update spots were this year. So I don't know. Any of you guys ready? Have you thought about this already?
This is going to be a tough one, but I knew that we would be looking at this stat and it would be super tiny on the screen. So I busted out my extra large monitor. So I'm looking at the big monitor now, running through these. Listen, I mean, Sarah News at the time was just unbelievable. I mean, that was the very first one that I thought of when we talked about this. I thought that was amazing. Obviously, seemed like it was giving vibes of, a possible audition to be involved with Weekend Update later on. If she just comes back and does that like once or twice a year, that would be amazing. But listen, I think was Child of Divorce. Oh, that was the second time we saw Longfellow, right? Was that the second one?
Yes.
Yeah, that one I thought had some really good jokes with his relationship, with his father and stuff. But and James Austin Johnson's Bill Walton, I thought was a really awesome impression. I heard some people, if you're not familiar with Bill Walton, you might not have enjoyed it as much, which makes sense. But I loved it a lot. And I did think Heidi's Gina Bianchi was amazing when she first did that one. And obviously she's a stalwart of the Weekend Update desk. I mean, she just has so many great original characters. Those are some of the ones that I loved.
Zoe, what about you? Do you have at least one favorite?
Yeah, I have some favorites. I really love seeing Marcello, and I really liked Krampus. I feel like that was hilarious, and the costume malfunction. I was really enjoying that one. I love seeing Every Boxer's Girlfriend again. Heidi is like one of the reasons I fell in love with the show. So, and that's one of the characters that made me fall in love with it. And then I feel like Punky Johnson and Mikey Day, when they came on, was like a breakthrough moment for Mikey Day for me. I've said it before. I simply did not care about Mikey Day until that update segment. So I feel like I definitely want to give some attention and love to that. Just seeing them interact and the chemistry they had.
Krampus didn't get a ton of love in that episode, and I loved it. That one had 3 guests. It was Krampus, which was Bowen Yang, and his horn fell off, which is what Zoe's referring to. Then Colin's great Aunt Pat, which was Heidi Gardner, with Mikey Day as her, like, I don't know, sex butler. I don't know. She was, whatever, grabbing him and making him do things for her. And then Kathy Ann, which is Cecily Strong's, goodbye in the Austin Butler show. But yeah, one I want to highlight is, Andrew, you mentioned Sarah News, which happened, I think, twice last year, now twice this year, is the Trish Dale Peppa Pig fan club president, which I'm a fan of the Sarah Sherman News segments, but that one was so good for me, which was to see Sarah Sherman play a character at the desk and do that. The facial expressions, the drawing she held up of the bears, doing sex acts, and just, the absolute panic and freak out in her face, and, working with Che and I love that one, I think, the most. So, and we also had a guest this year. We had two guests. We had April Ludgate and Leslie Knope from Amy and Aubrey from that episode, and then Drunk Uncle. So,
I mean, obviously pretty exciting anytime a former cast member comes back, especially folks as beloved, as Amy Poehler and Bobby Moynihan. And yes, I also really liked Peppa Pig fan club president. Her sexual suppression in that was really hilarious. But you know what I'm realizing as I looked at this list, because, I already mentioned a couple of Michael Longfellow's. And then I'm thinking about, the Michelangelo's David, which we saw this week, and I really liked a lot. And also, I had kind of forgotten about Punxsutawney Phil, and he's just, this grumpy guy kind of having an existential crisis. And I'm realizing, like, I might be a huge Michael Longfellow fan, because these are hitting, like, they're like, his appearances are filling the top of my favorite Weekend Update characters so far this year. So, yeah, he's obviously been amazing at the desk. I guess, a lot of those characters he plays are just very, they're these dry, kind of sardonic characters, and they're hilarious. And, maybe if we do too many of them, we'll want to see something different from him. But right now they're crushing. So that's like a realization I just had right now.
Yeah, I mean, hard to look at this list and the stats we just showed before and not talk about Michael Longfellow, just because, 5 appearances in 16 episodes for a rookie is just crazy. Anyway, five appearances for anybody would be crazy, but especially a rookie. So as I showed last slide, that it's, accounting for, a big bulk of his season. So, again, he appeared as himself in his debut, a la Pete Davidson back in the day. And then, as Andrew mentioned, he appeared again as a child of divorce, again, stand-up segment, and then Punxsutawney Phil, Dilbert, and now Michelangelo's David. So, Zoe, have you been a fan of what Longfellow has brought to Update so far?
Yeah, I think he's fun. I'm excited to see him. I mean, evilly in my heart, I'm like putting him and Marcelo against each other, and they have to like fight it out for my affection. And I pick Marcelo, so I'd say I enjoy him, but I'd rather Marcelo every time. And I know I'm the only one, and we shouldn't compare men, and it's bad, blah blah blah. But that's just how I'm wired.
I love seeing both of them. I mean, I think there were I have to mention the trend forecasters with 80 and Bowen last year, which I absolutely loved. But some of the update things can get tired, like you said, Haynes. So I mean, and Bowen Yang has been doing the same sort of things on update, but they just crush. So like, how can you complain about them? So if Michael Longfellow keeps doing what he's doing, I don't think we're gonna get tired of it too soon. Whereas some of the Kate or Cecily things, maybe it got a little stale. But just they bring so much talent to the desk that I never was mad to see them there, but it just makes me more excited to see somebody I don't normally see. So like last season we had a huge breakout year for JJ, and he didn't appear once on Update, and now first episode he's Mitch McConnell with Keenan as Herschel Walker, and then he appears as Millie Pounds and with Devin as Shirty, and then he's appearing as himself for his 100th appearance.
That was definitely one that I liked a lot. Yeah, the British rappers was very funny to me.
Allergic to dairy, yeah. And yeah, so one point about it we can update is just a kind of offhanded remark by JJ, which when we're talking about Michael and Colin earlier, Andrew, you made me think of this, which was he's like, I figured I'd come on Update and do them because it doesn't really matter. It's just like, that's kind of what the energy Update brings that I like and that I want, is to have it be the relaxed portion of the show where it's if you mess up a line, it's okay. It's like, because think about even the monologue is scripted. It's on cue cards. It's rigid. It's, got to be 4.5 minutes. It's the cold open is like a lot of pressure. Bill Hader's talked about that, but how it's like the countdown and all of a sudden it's just you talking to the country and the world. So Weekend Update kind of brings that energy that I like. to have it be a little bit more relaxed. And of course, we saw the most relaxed weekend update last week. Any more update pieces you guys want to talk about before we wrap up? All right, we are going to wrap up tonight, as we always do, by looking at the entire season in the power rankings. So this is a stat that combines every piece of data of the season into one number per episode. This chart is getting quite large now. It's 16 episodes. As I said, way back to 2008 with Miles Teller, all the way till last Saturday with Quinta. So right now, again, this combines screen time, appearances, weighted averages, percentages, all this stuff into one convenient number. So right now, King Keenan reigns supreme as always. I think he's kind of uncatchable at this point because he's ahead of the number 2 person by 12 points. Again, this is average over the season. So Keenan's at a 103, Bowen's at a 91, Heidi at a 90.5, Mikey at an 85. Chloe's at 5th place with 80 points per episode average. JJ right behind her, 78.3. Colin Jost is at a 78. Ego Wodum, 74.3. Michael Che, 57.5. Sarah Sherman right behind, 57.4. Andrew Dismukes, 46.6. In 12th place, Marcelo, 45.7. Michael Longfellow behind him at 42.4. Devin Walker, 41.3. Punky Johnson, 36.3, and Molly at 31.2. That is your 16 cast members ranked over the entire season. Zoe, when you look at a lot of numbers here, I mean, obviously Keenan, top of the class, but are you surprised by this at all?
No. I'm sad.
You're sad. Tell me why.
I mean, I want Punky and Molly. I just wish there was more time for everyone. I'm sad to see Punky and Molly at the bottom. But everything else, I'm like, yeah, that seems like those are the accurate stats.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, I also, once in a while will include who had a good episode or not so good episode based on their average. So if you look at the bottom of the cast, Andrew, Marcelo, Michael, Devin, Punky, and Molly, all of their averages increased, where the top, Keenan, Bowen, Heidi, and Mikey, all their averages went down. So this was a little bit of an underdog episode, which I liked. So if you look at it, 6.4% increase for JJ as well, which is behind Marcelo, 7% increase, and Michael, 6.7% increase. So they had the biggest nights compared to their season as a whole. Andrew Haynes, thoughts from you?
Well, the thing that jumps out is that we continue to have this kind of really clear delineation between the top half and the bottom half. Like, it seems like there's always this like 15-ish, 18-ish, point gap between, the bottom of the top half and then the top of the bottom half. So I'm seeing a lot of stuff that looks familiar. I do like seeing the boosts to everyone on the bottom half pretty much. And it makes sense that, that being the case, that, where those points would be coming from would be the top half. I'm not worried about Keenan or Bowen or Heidi or anybody up there. They will get plenty of time. So I love that it seems like a lot of the newer folks got a good boost. I mean, Marcelo and Michael got a big boost this week. So good for them. But I love this stat, this power ranking stat. I think it just, it's nice to have everything kind of boiled down to one simple metric. And I love seeing this chart and looking at, the impact or screen time, and I guess overall, since we're waiting, whether they said live from New York or whether, the sketch is focused on them or if it's a weekend update piece. I love seeing the variations from episode to episode and trying to figure out why we have some of these differences. But it looks like I just think it's really interesting that there are some that are kind of like, if you look at the Miles Teller episode, I mean, that is stacked, like dark green, big numbers for everybody in the top half, like it's like a wall coming from Keenan, down to JHA.
Right. It's
And
like
then,
they're wheeling out their starters right there. Start
right,
the season
exactly.
with the vets on the field.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's so interesting. And so now, we're at a place where it looks like, maybe we've had a chance to establish some of these folks. We can push them out there a little bit more frequently. So maybe Zoe, maybe this is just me being optimistic, but maybe we'll get to see a little more Punky and Molly. I certainly hope so.
And Zoe, to your point about Molly and Punky, so Molly, they just got to over 30 minutes of screen time this season, which is, I think, the data, I keep going backwards. I just covered the Idris Elba and John Mulaney episodes from 44. So I'm working my way back, getting more and more data. Especially, I'm really interested in the rookie data. So, like, Lauren Holt got 25 minutes, and Aristotle Tari got 15 minutes 38. So I feel like, Punky got like 26 minutes her rookie season. So those are, I think, hitting 30 minutes as a rookie. I don't want to call it too early, but it means like you're coming back. So obviously Punky came back without getting that hitting that bar. But Andrew and Punky and Lauren's season was a really weird rookie season. It was an election year where you had Alec Baldwin and Jim Carrey in every cold open for 9 minutes each, and the cast had 11,000 people in it, and it was COVID, and it was a strange time. But the stats are the stats. But yeah, I mean, Andrew, the dissertation I went on last show was about that, A squad and B squad. Mm-hmm. And then this past week, it almost sounded like there was like they had starters and then they had like a second string, because like we saw like Mikey and Keenan and Devin and people at the top half of the show, and then the second half it was like a whole different cast. We had Sarah Sherman having a sketch, and if you look at the screen time again, it's like and think about where they appeared. It seemed like there was like a second half showcast and a first half showcast. So just kind of bringing those two things together. And then for Punky, Zoe is mentioning that as well. She got her 100th appearance in the drug dealer sketch. She's now at 103 appearances in her career. So we had 4 Punkies this week. So I like to get. I wish we got 4 Punkies each week. Anyway, yeah, but this is how it stands right now, and I'll just ask some rapid fire questions before we wrap up. Don't think too much about it. Just gonna ask you the tightest races. Looking at this, we have a ton of data now. So, Zoe, who do you think will finish ahead of each other between Bowen and Heidi, who have been neck and neck all year? Right now, they're separated by 0.7 points. Who's finishing ahead, Bowen Yang or Heidi Gardner?
I think it's Heidi. I feel like if we keep trending like more Heidi without Cecily, Heidi is just gonna keep being more and more Heidi. It has to be Heidi.
Yeah, I mean, Heidi just had her lowest episode of the year, so I would bet on a big Heidi week with Molly Shannon, especially with the women of the cast. I think we'll have a good week in general. Andrew Haynes, I'll give you the tightest race because it's a really weird one. Michael Che and Sarah Sherman separated by 0.1. And again, this is taking into consideration almost 10,000 pieces of data. And as I mentioned earlier, Michael Che's average is 57.5, Sarah Sherman 57.4. Who's finishing ahead?
Yeah, this is a wild question because you've got one person who's essentially doing almost the exact same amount of screen time every week, right? And then you've got someone who is kind of riding a roller coaster of screen time. So she's up, she's down. Some weeks we get no Sarah. Some weeks we get a ton of Sarah, relatively speaking. Not compared to Keenan, but compared to what Sarah's often getting on the show. That's a tough question. I mean,
the toughest.
Yeah. And so I could just bet on the stability of Che, but I'm gonna say that Sarah's had a really strong season to me, and I don't think it's gonna get worse. So I am gonna say that Sarah ekes out Che by the time this thing is over.
Yeah, and Sarah literally on roller coaster with Michael B. Jordan too. So yeah, Michael Che actually the impetus for the power rankings, way back when I started doing this, it was like, because if you do a screen time ranking it's always going to be Update Guys and Keenan. And it's like, that's no fun. If you do by appearances, they're always going to be at the bottom because they get one a night. So I was like, there has to be a way to factor in all the empirical data I can get my hands on, we see every week, and make it into a stat. So that's why, otherwise it would be every week. It'd be the power rankings or Colin Joseph, Michael Che, and Keenan, and that's it. So last one for Zoe. Chloe Feynman versus JAJ. Chloe right now leads by 1.5 on average. Who's finishing on top? Chloe Feynman had a great episode with Quinta and Woody Harrelson, Pedro Pascal, Stephen Marty, and Meg Thee Stallion. Those were her best episodes this year.
I'd say Chloe, but I feel like for who's going to give us more memorable stuff, JAJ. I definitely feel like what he does sticks in my head a little bit more than Chloe. So, but I think Chloe's going to win.
All right, we have a vote for. We picked Heidi, Sarah Sherman, and now Chloe. And then, maybe I should have given you the Marcelo Andrew one, but I'll give Andrew the Andrew one. So Andrew and Marcelo, so a rookie versus a third year, separated by 1.1. Who's going to win this year, Andrew or Marcelo?
Gosh, I mean, it does feel like Marcelo's been coming up and his Mukes has been down a little bit recently, but I don't think I'm going to fall for that trap because it's natural that Marcelo should be on an upswing right now since he's a new cast member. And I'm going to say that Dismukes finds a way to squeak this one out.
All right, definitely maybe the race to watch, I would say, because Dismukes has been probably the most inconsistent, and I don't mean that in terms of performance. I mean in terms of stats, because look at the dark reds on this chart. Only been a couple shutouts this season, which were Dismukes and Travis Kelce, Dismukes and Pedro Pascal, Punky in the Woody Harrelson episode, Molly in the Kelce episode. And that's it. So the fact that Longfellow in the Martin episode. So there's only been a handful of shutouts, which became a regular thing in the past couple of years that they'd be cast member gone. So I love the team atmosphere this year. That is very rarely a shutout. But Dismukes has, right away, cold open season premiere. He's on screen the entire time, and he's had up and downs. So that one's the one to watch. And the last one, I'll give myself the last one. Longfellow and Devin. So they're also separated by 1.1, like Andrew and Marcelo. So right now they're in the 13 and 14 spot. The fact that Michael Longfellow's already had 5 update appearances, I think that'll probably do it. I'd be surprised if he got to 6, especially if there's any cast departures and there's any goodbyes coming up. So I think we might get to see a good Devin-led sketch. And Michael Longfellow has kind of had a reputation, a good one that is, of being someone who just kind of pops in, gets a laugh, and is out. So, Devin Walker has had a couple little points like that, but I can see him taking a bigger role in sketches and Michael Longfellow being the quick joke guy, as he did in the drug dealer sketch, which I thought was an unbelievable appearance by him this past week, blending into the wall, awesome. Selling black tar heroin.
I thought that was such a fun, just creative little joke, the way that they had him in there and then popping out. That was a great appearance. I love that.
Right. I mean, possibly should have ended the sketch right there. I think it was the climax of the sketch. And, it's if you write sketch comedy, it's really hard to end sketches. So to get a huge, kind of wrap it all up and kind of reverse the joke and do that is a great way to end sketch. So I will pick Devin in that race. I think it's going to be really close, though. Anyway, that'll do it for stats tonight on SNL. I can't wait. Next week, we're talking about the 20th cast member in SNL history to host the show more than once with Molly Shannon. So expectations, Zoe, are you a Molly Shannon fan? She's been in a couple TV shows lately. You watch old SNL or anything?
Yeah, I mean, when I see her, I like her.
Well said, Andrew
Haynes.
Sweet.
I've seen her in.
Short and sweet. Yeah. So I love people that
I like her.
People who see the episodes with me know that I'm a huge Molly Shannon fan. when I was getting into SNL was about seventh grade. So that's 1997. And obviously she was a star of the show, you know, with Sherry O'Terry and Willow Ferrell.
She was a superstar of the show.
Yes, exactly. With Ferrell and Catan and all those folks. So, and she was the superstar was huge, but really so many characters of her were just massive at that time. Can't wait to see what kind of kicks she brings back. She's a real kicker. SNL's really been promoting the kicks this week, so we'll see what kind of kicks she throws for us. But to me, she was my generation's Cecily Strong. She played those similar types of big extreme characters, and she just put so much into them, so much energy, so much passion, and she's just unbelievably funny. I love Molly Shannon so much. So excited to have her back. Sniffing my fingers already.
If there's one thing on your Molly Shannon, I mean, she hasn't hosted since 2007 with musical guest Linkin Park. So it's been a while. What's on your number one on your wish list for the Molly Shannon show? Because you're going to podcast about it. So, you know, maybe you can reference this moment right now and say, I got my wish.
That's true. Gosh, what would I be hoping for with Molly? I mean, all of her, you know what? There are so many characters that she did, and I would love to see, and I'm forgetting the name of this sketch right now, but when she was on the talk show and she would always say like, yes, 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 and kick her feet in the air. That was like a one that kind of I fell in love with a very long time ago. But I would love her like drunk lounge singer characters. I would anything that she does, if she brings back anything, I mean, we'll be thrilled to have that kind of callback. But it definitely, I don't need that as a gimmick either. I mean, she is so awesome in everything that I think that she will have, I mean, she's going to be perfect. Although I will say, I'm sure that they will bring back at least one character. And the reason I say that is because I think the characters that she was best at were these really big, extreme, wild characters. And I think it will be a real challenge to come up with something like that completely from scratch this week that we know might hit as big. So I wouldn't be surprised if they brought back one big character like that. But I hope they write her into a bunch of stuff and we get to see her as a bunch of modern day extreme characters. Like if she plays some sort of, just off the rails, conservative talk show host or something, not to steal like, anything that Cecily's been doing. I don't want to over compare them because they are completely separate, but I do see some similarities. If they give her like a big character like that, that would be great, whether it's old or new. But I do predict, if you're asking for a prediction here, I do predict they'll bring a character back.
Right. I mean, you don't bring somebody back to the show and then not acknowledge they're on the show. I mean, Sudeikis being a recent example, playing Biden again because Biden's now president, and then he played the devil again on Update, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, it would be kind of almost strange to not acknowledge that.
Yeah, it's not exactly a hot take to say that she might bring a character back. But yeah, exactly. I definitely think it's going to happen. So we'll see which one.
Awesome. So, Zoe, thank you so much for being on the show tonight. Do you have anything to tell listeners or where they can reach out to you or anything like that?
Nowhere for anyone to reach me, but thank you for having me. I really had a good time.
Absolutely. I had a great time too. This has been a really fun show. Andrew Haynes, anything to plug other than the upcoming Atlanta Braves season?
It's going to be a good one. I'll say that. I think the Braves are going to be good this year. Gosh, I'm knocking on wood because I hope I didn't just like curse our whole season right now. No, nothing to plug. I know you can find me on Twitter at SNL Has a Cast or Instagram at Candrew Attitude. Always love talking SNL, and I've been for a long time I was not on social media at all, literally for a decade, from 2000, basically 2011 to 2020 or something. And so it took me quite a while to creep back into this. John really forced it on me, but I did make a commitment sometime in the past couple months. I mentioned on one of the shows that I promise I will start interacting with folks again. So if you tweet at me or comment on something or send me a message, I love talking SNL with folks, and I'm glad to do it. So that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, great to have you back. I'll see you in 2 years.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's been a fun time. We'll be back. Patron feedback show tomorrow night, and then the hot take show at 1:10 a.m. following the Molly Shannon Jonas Brothers episode, only on NBC and Peacock. So for Andrew Haynes, Zoe Walker, I am Mike Murray from the SNN. We will see you next time. Thank you.